Hi everyone, this is Emanuele from Italy, but you know me better as Evil Dead Italia. Today we are joined by Lindsay Farris, the Australian actor that fans of Ash vs Evil Dead we remember as Dalton, the charismatic Knight of Sumeria. The Knight of Sumeria brought a whole new layer of mythology to the third season of the show, and Lindsay's performance made Dalton a memorable part of the saga. Dalton's journey was short but intense, including two very memorable on-screen deaths. Beyond Evil Dead, Lindsay's career spans theater, film, and television, with recent projects that showcase his versatility and growth as an artist. Anyway, without any further ado, welcome Lindsay Farris.
Good
Yeah,
morning. Nice to see you.
I know that ring.
Yeah, this is the Knights of Sumeria ring that they made for the show. There's only a few of these in existence. I think all the knights got one, but it's really cool. I still have it today.
Yeah. I have I am a collector too.
Are you?
And,
yeah.
Yeah, I have your costume of the very first episode of the series. So I have those two things and the ring. Yes, in my collection.
That's
so,
very cool. That makes you an official Knight of Sumeria. You know that, right?
Yeah, and do you know that there is a prop maker group on Facebook that is named after Knight of Sumeria, and one of their first making was reproduce the ring. So there are many people with the ring nowadays, and it's cool.
I did say that. Yeah, it's like a secret family around the world.
Exactly. We are many. So the first question is, well, first of all, thank you for being here with us. It's a pleasure having you here. Is a dream coming true for a Evil Dead fan. And so the first question is, how did you first get involved in Ash vs Evil Dead, and what do you remember from your very first day on set?
Yeah, really great question. So when my journey with the Evil Dead starts a very long time ago. My grandmother, for those old enough to remember what a Betamax player is. So Betamax was pre-VCR, which was the cassette tapes that loaded, and then you had DVDs, and then we moved into Blu-ray. And so on Betamax, my grandmother used to have two tapes that we would play. One of them was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This was when I was about probably 13 or 14, by the way. And then the other one was the original Army of Darkness film. And so that's when I sort of came across the Evil Dead franchise a long time ago. And so many years later, maybe, I don't know, nearly 15 to 20 years later, I got the audition for the Evil Dead TV series and I watched it. And it was so fantastic. I mean, just like anyone watching the first episode of the first season for the first time, it was so well, like the homage that Sam Raimi sort of made to the original films was so prevalent and so present in the films. And so just like anyone, I watched the whole series, binge watched it, and it was just exceptional. And so then I did the audition, and the audition itself was a scene that was never really in the TV series. I remember showing it to Dana De Lorenzo at one point too, and she was like, "This is great. We should have put it in the series." Like it was this scene on a bus. And I did some very strange accent for the thing that did not also make it to the series. But then, I got the part. And so a lot of people don't know this about me. I'm half Maori, which is Indigenous New Zealander. And so the series shot in New Zealand. So it was also a bit of a homecoming for me in New Zealand to sort of discover more about my personal lineage. And I mean, Dalton's story is also a journey of lineage and honor and the people that, you know, informed the person that you are today and what you have to pick up. Because, you know, in the series, they talk about the prophesied one, this guy that's coming, and, you know, legend that's been handed down generation over generation. And so the first thing I sort of rocked up, this is even before shooting, we had Rob Tappert, the EP, had a dinner, and I met everybody. I met people that, you know, I've been a fan of for years, be it Lucy Lawless, Bruce Campbell. And we just met everybody and sort of had a chat. And my first day on set, I had to deliver this very big monologue where Dalton talks about, you know, the history of the Knights of Sumeria and his journey, and that they've been looking for Ash and they find him. And I remember at this dinner going up to Bruce Campbell and saying, "Hey, you know, tomorrow's my first day. Have you got any advice for me?" I've got this massive monologue. And I remember in the beginning in season 1, he has this massive monologue to explain where he's been all of these years and the history, and they're fun, but also really difficult because you've got to make this massive page of, or a few pages of texts ring, and there's a lot of words, and it's your first day. So I was like, and I said, Bruce, have you got any advice for me? And he just looked at me with this shit-eating grin, and he was like, yeah, good luck with that. And that was the first bit of advice that I ever got. So yeah, I rocked up on set, and it was amazing. It's all on sound stages. They built Ash's house, so you're literally walking into the room and the environment. And then yeah, that was my first day on set, and it was amazing. It was such a privilege to get to work with those guys and to be part of it.
That's great. I just rewatched the episode. A couple of days ago, because yesterday I have even the privilege to interview Katrina Hobbs, that was Candace Barr in the first episode. So I rewatched the first 3 or 4 episodes to remind the scene, the details. And yeah, that scene is massive, because there is all the animation and CGI from the
exactly
going, with your voice that told the story. So it's great. It's great. And so the next question comes natural to me. The Knight of Sumeria added a whole new dimension to the Evil Dead mythology. How did you approach bringing Dalton to life?
Yeah, it was that's a great question as well. And funny enough, it sort of started in the wardrobe department, when the sort of people that design the props and the costumes and the sets. So the first thing that we had was sort of Dalton's outfit and his physical aesthetic, right? And we sort of imagined, if you imagine, an old school knight, but instead of using a sword and riding a horse, he rides a motorcycle and wields a shotgun. And so we started with some sort of like versions of what contemporary armor might be. So his bigger leather jacket, and then going into the sort of cuneiform symbols and a lot of the sort of mythology that we wanted to build into the outfit, that then, as you're shooting the season, comes to inform the history, but also becomes the aesthetic through which we're delivering story when we're not just saying words, and in behavioral mechanics and all those sorts of things. So it was a mythology that, again, the showrunner had a lot of thoughts and ideas. Rob Tappert had a lot of ideas. And so we sort of just brainstormed what we wanted this legacy and lineage to be. And then as the show unfurled, because when you get to set 2, they don't have just, 10 episodes written. All of the episodes sort of continued to evolve. And a lot of those symbols are also reminiscent of the Necronomicon and how different mediums would tell their story. You've got the bad guys version of these knights and who they are as a sort of antagonist to the bad guys narrative, but then the good guys, and when they feel they're sort of, living in their true identity and discovering. And again, a lot of the mythology for them is stuff that they've read about or has been passed down through story. So everyone has therefore their own different take on what the history of it as well. But it all centers around this sort of searching for Ash methodology. And, Ash himself is almost a contemporary knight, as it is too. And so complementing him in the best way that you can as well. And again, Dalton picks up a bit of a nickname, which is New Guy, because he seems to know a lot about the world and everything about Ash and the Deadites and the Necronomicon, but he's never had it in practice before. The physiological experience of shooting Deadites is new to all of them. So a lot of it was the discovery process, actually shooting and being involved on the set and dealing with his experiences, and it sort of built out from there.
Yeah, and what you said bring me to another question. As I said, I actually own the screen used costume from the episode 1 of the season 3. The costume is so detailed with many layers. So how much did the costume and the makeup, particularly as the diet, influenced the way in which you performed?
Very much so. I mean, the version that I had, and I had a few jackets because, as you mentioned, I die a lot of times in the series. And so we had different variations that were more reinforced and others that weren't. But the jacket itself is just very heavy and big, which is good. I've ridden motorcycles for a very long time. And so it's useful from just a practical standpoint as armor on the road. But certainly it also had very large sort of shoulder pieces and like the bulk of that. And that was very helpful to sort of get into the physicality and the body of of a character that lives under a suit of armor as well, you know. So the influences from costume were really, really strong.
Yeah, I remember that in let's say in the box with the costume, there was even a pair of sunglasses, but I don't remember you wearing those during the series.
Well, I think pretty much every time you meet Dalton, it happens to be night. So certainly outdoors, I don't know that he has any scenes that are outdoors during the day. So they're legitimate, but in terms of things that made it into the season, yeah, a lot of the times you meet Dalton when it's midnight or after dark. So
yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. So Dalton's relationship with Ash mixed respect and tension. How did you and Bruce Campbell work on building that dynamic?
It was effortless from the moment that we met each other. And as I mentioned at that dinner, it was the first time that our lives crossed. It was, I don't want to look, Lindsay Farris personally, I love Bruce Campbell and his work. And he's, you know, he is such a great character actor. And Ash is an iconic horror figure throughout all generations for so many reasons. And so Dalton is his sort of new guy, is constantly, I don't want to say he's not berated, but he's a bit of a fanboy, right? And so there's a mentorship layer and an admiration piece that really is no acting required. Lindsay Farris and Bruce Campbell got to have that execution as well in our own life. And he's just such a nice guy as well. So, you know, there was a lot that you get to watch about it from an actor too, when they set foot on step, it's just on set, and they've been doing it every season, and they've got a very deep history with characters. So you just get to watch and observe and learn. And it's, you know, you've got a scene partner. So there's a lot of play that happens. You know, no one delivers a one-liner like Bruce Campbell. And so when you get to be present for that and see how he does it, like that's Lindsay looking at Bruce Campbell, but you know, Dalton and Ash are very similar in him learning how to behave, how to do it, how to fight deadites. Like they're very similar.
Yeah, absolutely. As we said, your character had not one but two memorable deaths. What was it like to perform those scenes, especially Dalton's transformation into a deadite?
Yeah, great question. And interesting because I don't know that this is a tease, but you know, because Dalton sort of dies a third time in the sort of the gray realm underneath the world as well. And so, you know, I die a lot of times in this show. The first time, I think, let me just think. Yeah, we did. So the first time that Dalton dies too, it's an homage to one of the earlier moments in Evil. You know, he's turns into a deadeye. Spoiler alert to people that haven't seen it. But there's this particular camera motion that's reminiscent of Ash in the earlier franchise, where you know the deadeye picks him up, and then we go traveling through the
absolutely.
And then, you know, something happens. And it's a lot of fun, you know, because the only issue is that you're up at, you know, 3 o'clock in the morning because we're chasing the dark, if you will. So, you know, you're racing against the sun and it's cold and wet. And there's a lot of like VFX stuff, but a lot of it's physical. So there's a lot of wet, blood covered things and sticks. And you're in the bush. Like that wasn't a set piece. We were out there. It's freezing in New Zealand at that time in the morning. And then there's maybe, I don't know, 2.5 to 3 hours that you're in prosthetics, and the prosthetics team were second to none. And so they're putting on different bits of sort of face prosthetics, and then they're putting makeup on all of those. They've got spray guns, and so yeah, you're in there for a hot minute, and then you know you get on the set, and they take a lot of different shots of the scene. But it's very fun because, again, you're working with someone like Dana, and you just get to look into her eyes at 3 o'clock in the morning and go, what are we doing for a job? What is our life? Like, this is absurd. And then other times where you're, you know, working with Lucy Lawless, and we had these big cannons full of like blood and guts and, you know, gruesome bits of sinew. And they literally just point this gun of like filth at you, and then action, and then when you perhaps shoot yourself, or the guns go off, then you just hit with this wave of just slop and filth, and you really usually only get one take to do that. So it can be a lot of fun, because you're like, in what other job in the world do you get to do this sort of stuff? But again, yeah, it can be sticky and messy and take a bit of time to get on and off.
About the scene you were talking about, the homage to Evil Dead 2. Yesterday, before let's say while I was preparing the interview, I remind that I interviewed the director of that episode, that are the Mesa brothers, and they let's say, how did the scene happen? You were wired to something to be, or you were say, how this happened, the scene in which you were moved into the woods?
Yeah, great question. So they do a few different things, right? So some of it is in studio, where they can use wires, where they may play some elements in reverse, where they have a wire and they'll lower you towards the camera very quickly, or they'll sit you on a mount and they'll sort of mount the camera to your body, and then you're sort of with a green screen behind you. And so basically they call action, and a team of people will pull on a rope, and then you'll sort of get some propulsion. But obviously we're not flying through the bush for that time. And then in others, there's wires that they'll drop you, or they can add different parts in reverse. And then when you're on set, you play different moments of that. So they might want to get little pickups, for example, landing on the tree or on a spike. And so then they'll have a different prosthetic for that. And so they sort of, then when they come to post-production, then they'll sort of combine all of those different elements together. And then the visual effects, like the just digital effects, will come in, and they'll add pieces later, whether it be, blood squirts extra where they need them, or taking out your pupils. So, deadites don't have pupils, so they'll take all of that out in post. So there's a lot of people that go into creating those moments that are often very quick, and never really the amount of effort that goes into those, you just see it in a glance. So and the Mesa brothers were great directors. Like that was a really fun episode to work on.
Okay, next question. So I understood you have also a rich background in theater. How has the stage work shaped you in the way you approach roles from film and TV?
That's a very generous question. Thank you. I started on stage when I was a kid. So I think when I was 13, I was in high school. And I grew up in a sort of not regional, but sort of a place that's not in the city in Australia. And so I joined what was called the New South Wales Junior Drama Ensemble. And funny enough, this is very interesting. When I was 13, a guy called Jai Courtney, who you might know from the Terminator movies, and some other he's one of the, there's another, I'll think about what it is, the DC or Marvel. I'll think about what it is. But he also was in that New South Wales Junior Drama Ensemble when we were kids, and you'd walk around a room, pulling expressions and all sorts of stuff. And so a few of us from that time have sort of gone on to other things. Another actress, Yael Stone, who was in a show called Orange is the New Black, in this little Sydney theater group. And so that was where I sort of started. And then I started on the stage. I remember I won an award for Best Actor in a tiny little short film that I'd done, and the audition was for this Australian TV show called Home and Away, and that was the prize. And I did this audition, and she said, "You need an agent." And I was like, "Well, what's that? What do they do?" And so then I got this agent in Sydney. And so the first few things that I did were on stage. I did a lot of theater. And then I got a job at the Sydney Theatre Company. Kate Blanchett, it was her first show when she was the artistic director of Sydney Theatre Company. And so that was sort of like the turning point in theater. And then I sort of grew and built a TV career out of that then sort of moved into film and television after that. But I learned on the stage. I think that the difference in stage is, again, you're dealing with a lens or like a frame that is very large, that is always your full body at all times, versus film and TV, which is far more, like this. So everything exists within a lens. but it also develops, I think, a fearlessness for utilization of everything that you are in sort of building a performance. And on stage, you get to work with some really, really cool actors. So I learned my craft by watching people on stage for most of my youth and early years, really. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. And not just only theater, but you are a pianist as well, if I'm not wrong.
I am indeed. I've played piano since I was 4 years old. It's an instrument that I've got a big grand piano in the corner over there, but it's been a come and go relationship. I did my first concert actually in Los Angeles 2 years ago, which was a Batman themed a production that was really cool. I played Mr. Freeze and got to sing opera, and then played Two-Face, and I played a grand piano on one side and a sort of old beaten up jazz piano on the other side, and played two pianos at once as these two different sort of parts of Two-Face. But piano has always been a part of my journey. Piano is actually what brought me to Los Angeles. I was cast in a show that never went ahead that was by Elton John and Alan Ball, which was called Virtuoso. It was a show for HBO, and it was about the birth of the concert music industry. I lived in Budapest before I moved to LA. And my green card, I played a concert pianist in that show, but my green card actually came off the back of that TV show for HBO. So yeah, music, and particularly neoclassical and concert music, has had a big role to play in my life since I went to the conservatorium when I was about 14. And then I sort of realized that it was very difficult to make a profession in the classical music industry. So sort of, it's been a little bit like this.
So a strange question, but not at all. Does music play a role in how you prepare for character or performance?
Yeah, great question. And yes, it does very much. All of my characters have a playlist. And usually because, music, you can, if there's a scene, you might find different music that triggers different things for you. Some, might be more classical for some of their softer moments, or some might be heavier, but it can also throw you into a scene very quickly before you're, while you're in a trailer or you're waiting for things to happen, because there's a lot of time between sets, something to play that sort of also keeps you within the world or the environment that is very emotionally sort of connective. So yeah, music is a huge part. I remember too, I played Hamlet maybe 3 or 4 times. And I remember, I think my first or second time, I wrote the entire play as a piece of concert music. And so I don't know that it helped, but certainly it felt like an exercise in discovering a character beyond language. And music for me, often writing characters as music, is another language for me to help sort of explore who that is in me and then just listen. So yeah, music's a huge part of that for me.
That's great. And if you have to think to a playlist for Dalton, what do you put in it?
It's a very cool playlist. I'd have to look it up. I still probably have his playlist somewhere. But a lot of rock music and a lot of metal and a lot of like stuff that you'd be happy to listen to on a motorcycle. But at the same time, I imagined that he had long sort of trips on bikes in the middle of either the desert or driving up, the ocean highways, where it's actually something more peaceful and chill and sort of cruisy. I love that element about things too, exploring characters. And that's what music does, is it allows you to explore characters and scenes that aren't actually, in the final product. But yeah.
That's great. You anticipated me when you talk about Mr. Freeze. So you placed Mr. Freeze in the Dark Knight review, if I spell it correctly.
Yeah, this was the show. Here we go.
Yeah. And what was the experience like? I mean, it's a comedy play, or it's more action.
Yeah. So Russell Beatty, who's the producer, and funny enough, he lives 5 minutes from my grandmother's house in Australia. So, and then, this show was in Hollywood. He is a diehard, worldly sort of very props and sort of practical items driven producer. He made a show called The Empire Strips Back that had a very long life and still is running today, which is like a burlesque version of Star Wars, really.
Cool.
But for example, even he made this book, Gotham. He wrote
Wow.
this, and if you sort of go through it, you'll see that the sort of aesthetic of the Batman world that he sort of put together, and he created all these photographs. He built all these props and things, and we had a lot of these in the foyer and during the show. But particularly the legacy of characters and their history, it made for a blend of sort of the true stories that sort of give these characters their lives and doing another spin on it. So, for example, the Mr. Freeze story honed in a lot about his relationship with his, frozen wife. And sort of, so I sung an operatic version of Sound of Silence that was, very, very deep and bassy, but, with this sort of space helmet on, it's not the contemporary versions we know. It's like all very hobbled together, cobbled together sort of pieces. And so the show was investigated a lot of those backstories for the characters in a really different sort of way, based on the sort of pre and early stages of those characters' development and life, because he loves it. He was really, really passionate about it. In exciting news, I believe it is coming back next year. I don't know where yet, but we'll see what the life of that is.
That's great. And it's something we can see even on, I don't know, streaming or YouTube, or it's just a theater thing? Because there is a way to watch it in some
great
some
question.
Other way.
I'm not sure. What I would do is, and again, I don't know if the Instagram handle is the same. The show was called The Batet Follies of 1939. I believe the name is changing when it comes back out. But if you go to Instagram and look up, I believe the company is called Giant Panda King. Mm-hmm. And if you follow their Instagram, you'll be able to find updates on the show there.
On the show. Okay. That's great. I'm very curious because I like this kind of stuff, and
it's a really cool take on the entire franchise. I think it's really worth it for anyone that loves the legacy and the true origin stories behind a lot of those characters before it meets, let's say a Disney budget of whatever, bigger. What happens too often franchises when they get big cash injections, like the origin stories, I think are really different and often really cool and interesting and very human.
Yeah, that's great. Talking about your other roles, recently you appeared in My Life is Murder alongside Lucy Lawless. What was it like reuniting with her in such a different context after Ash vs. Evil Dead?
And funny. So I was in the first episode of My Life is Murder, which is a show that they now shoot in New Zealand. It's still running and it's going very well. Lucy is a producer and plays the lead in that. And it's a sort of murder mystery show that means that she goes and figures out new cases. And so the pilot episode, I played a rent boy. So like a call boy that she had hired, or sorry, that something had gone wrong. So she'd hired me, presuming I might be the murderer, to figure out whether or not it was the case. And it was very, very funny. I think you can see on my Instagram some of the shots from our time on set together. But going from Lucy Lawless killing me and chasing me and hunting me down in Ash vs. Evil Dead to then playing her lover in that way was very cool and very different and very fun. And Lucy's such a warm and welcoming and wonderful human being. It was just very nice to play with her. I think at times she also was looking and going, what a funny world that we live in that means that now we get to do this. It was very, very different. And it's a great show. It's a really fun show to watch too, My Life is Murder. It was great.
And if you can, obviously, what are your current and future projects, except obviously the comeback of the show on theater?
Yeah, so I just finished filming a project in Australia called Rossum's Universal Robots. And that is the third project that I've worked on with a guy called Alex Proyas. So Alex Proyas created a film called The Crow, and then he made another movie called I, Robot. We've worked on something called Gods of Egypt together. He made another great film called Knowing. And so we just met up in Australia, and we shot at Disney Studios in Australia, which is this. It's based on the 1920s play by Karel Čapek, which is the first. Was really the creation of the word robot. It predates iRobot, and iRobot sort of took that and is the bigger legacy about human experiences with AI and robots and how they sort of engage. But this is the original. It's a Czech play, and it's a farcical musical comedy romp that basically ends in something to do with the robots. But it's a really fun movie set in a factory that's due to release next year. It's also the first thing that I'm an executive producer on at that sort of scale. So please go and see it when it comes out. Yeah, that we shot down there for maybe 6 to 8 months. It's got Anthony LaPaglia, Richard Roxburgh, a bunch of really cool. Sammy Alsop plays the lead female in that. And yeah, big, if you can think, skyscraper style robots in the 1920s in the battle for mankind.
Wow.
So that is a lot of fun and a great project that's coming up. And then if that goes very well or well enough, then there's a television series that I've also sort of created that would come out after that, or we'd start shooting, as long as Rossum's does well.
That's cool. Finger crossed then.
Fingers crossed.
Finger crossed, absolutely. Looking ahead, are there genres or roles you'll still love to explore that fans might not expect from you?
Roles that I'd love to explore that I haven't played already?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm certain there are. It's funny as you sort of get older as an actor and as you sort of start working in the business. Like I've played all sorts of different characters in all sorts of realities and worlds, and that's part of the reason I started acting in the beginning, was to explore the world from different perspectives that weren't my own, and then to use your voice as an actor to bring those to life and to tell those stories. And so I've had the privilege of exploring a lot of worlds that are not mine. And so as I get older, I think the more that I just want to explore that even more deeply and figure out worlds that are not my own, and working with really great people, Alex Proyas, who again directed the original films of The Crow and iRobot. Like when you meet creatives that you have a shared sort of or good working relationship with, where you can just trust them completely and you have a great team around you, we all get to go to those places together. It's the same with Ash versus Evil Dead. When you're with such a core group of great people, the permission that you then get to have to explore those worlds completely, I think is a gift. So I'm open to sort of basically any role that continues to challenge my own perspectives around, what it is to be a human being, and doing it with really good people and the freedom to sort of really go to those places. So I know that's a broad answer, but it means that nothing is really off the table. And there are so many different characters that come across my desk all the time that I'm like, oh, this would be cool. This would be really interesting. Yeah, so it's a bit of an open door at the moment.
That's great. I would like to ask you another question about theater. What advice do you give to young actors coming from the theater toward the screen roles, especially in genres like horror and fantasy?
Yeah, and it's a really, really interesting time for storytelling, particularly in digital mediums. We are almost incapable today of figuring out where something like artificial intelligence is going to take us as a species. Already there are systems coming out that allow the creation of far more spectacular visual effects style or world-driven environments far more cost effectively, or if for cheap, for nothing. And so what that sort of allows is more access to things that used to be somewhat limited to studios or budgets at a much more accessible level. I start by saying that because the model that I grew up by and many of my friends grew up by doesn't really exist anymore. There isn't, the way we engage with media now is on a phone. Phones didn't exist when I started. Betamax and how, films were, you have to load a cassette and there was all this other stuff. the technology scale is getting smaller. Accessibility is becoming smaller. The way people consume media and film and story is getting easier to access. And the reason I say that is then because even being the theater or being a new actor, the opportunities that are there for you today weren't there when I started. So you have the opportunity to forge your own path. I'd suggest getting out there and creating your own content. You know, the earliest films that I made were with my friends with a camera in the backyard, and little short films, and you can probably find them online still, some of them on YouTube. Whether it had been for a school project or just for my friends with a camera in the backyard, there's no right way to do it. There's no trodden path that is uniquely the path to tread. Anything, I think, that's going to help stimulate you more creatively. And again, I think one of the biggest assets for that is people. Who are you working with, or who do you know, or can you make things with, to help challenge your own understanding of who you are as a performer and as a creative person. So the transition from sort of, let's say, stage to television or film specifically, I think it can be a bit more of a technical one. I'd love to say that it's restricted by getting an agent and putting yourself out there, but it's not really. Even just, you know, the audition mechanic, because of COVID, meant that we used to go into a room and you'd have to travel, you know, 2 hours there and learn the things. Everything's done on a self-tape, and I still film mine on an iPhone. You know, everybody's doing their self-tapes on an iPhone. So you can sort of prepare just by getting scripts and shooting your own self-tapes at home with a backdrop. You don't even need a backdrop. But so the way that you have to sort of educate, and there are so many great courses too, just everywhere to sort of explore more about storytelling through film and TV. The transition, though, I think is much shorter than it used to be, because the passage to entry now looks like this. You know, it's not going into a room and trying to get in front of casting directors. Again, my first opportunity moving to film and TV was because I shot a little film with my family, won an award that was an audition, and the audition meant they said, you need an agent. And that's how I got in. It was through doing stuff on my own. So I'd say forge your own path. There isn't a path that has been trodden today that within the next 10 to 20 years, with what's happening with artificial intelligence, what's happening with phones and how people engage media, literally it is up to you to tell the next generation what that path should and can look like. And there's no right way.
Yeah, and I suppose that technology gives more room for, let's say, to emerge, but it is even more challenging because there is a broader competition, right?
There is more competition, and I'll suggest that even in the industry, and the same with all the greats, you know, if you think of Meryl Streep, if you think of Daniel Day-Lewis, if you think of any of the biggest actors, you know, they are very iconically who they are. The path and artists that they are is so uniquely theirs that the more individual and more you can lean into your own value system and who you are as an artist, the more opportunities there are for people to be able to place you. You know, casting directors are always working from the film backwards. They've got a job to do. It's, you know, we've got this role and we need to find the right person for the role. And in auditioning, you can present what everyone else is presenting and, you know, the same choices or what it says in the stage directions in a particular way. Sorry, or you can just lean more into who you are, so that the next time casting directors are going, we need something that's sort of like this. It's not about just being memorable. I'd say it's being more authentically true to the creative choices that you want to make and the statements you want to make as an artist. And there is no instruction manual for that. That's you. And that's a lifetime's journey. You know, I've been an actor for nearly 25 years odd. So is it? No, not that long, surely. Well, maybe. Yeah. So, you know, and my journey has evolved throughout that a lot, because I also think even just as an actor, as we've discussed, my music has informed who I am as an artist. My skills as a producer and a director have informed who I'm an artist, as is the life that I've lived, growing up in country Australia versus living in cities. Like all of that stuff is uniquely yours. And the technology is evolving. That means no one knows where it's going. You know, even we've got headsets that people wear today. You've got, you know, big phones, little phones, cinema screen projections. More people are, you know, the relationship to the cinema and the movie going experience is changing. The way that gaming is sort of shaping things is changing. So, you know, I'd love to say there's a right way, but I'd say that the best way is to continue to challenge your own perceptions of self through story and by being bold in your creative choices. And there's no manual for that. It just it entails courage, and courage is the same reason that you continue, you know, because when it gets difficult, that's the same energy that's going to keep driving you forward.
That's great, and I think your journey as an artist, because you play piano, you play in theater, it's very interesting and inspiring, in my opinion.
Well, a lot of people don't know this about me as well. I'm also the CEO for an engineering and marketing company, like as a side back piece again, and that opened the door for me into production and producing. And that world, I don't often blend the two worlds together, but it's also part of the same journey for me. Like there's creativity in all of that space that I find too, from an engineering perspective and a creative marketing perspective, that also I think talk about human behavior and how people work and how technology supports or depletes our capacity for different areas in that. And that's because my brain is always constantly looking for things to unpick and work, and, you know, and that fills that, but also creates more about who you are as an individual as well, I think.
That's fascinating. The last few phrases you talk about video games, and there was a recently published an Evil Dead video game with character from Ash vs Evil Dead. I think that Dalton was missing. Dalton was missing, and it was a missed opportunity for.
I'd love to say that too. I agree. There's a character in the game, if you play it, that looks a lot like Dalton, and he is. I think it's, you know, if you play it, you'll see him in there. But yeah, that was a very tight little project and a very cool game. If you haven't played it, I played it. I'm not very good at it, but I do like the game a lot.
And so you are a video game player. Do you have a specific genre you prefer?
Great question. I used to play a lot more video games than I do today, because I don't have as much time for them. Most of the games I play at the moment are now on my iPad, and they're things like, you know, tower defense style games.
Yeah.
But no, some of the games I grew up on, this is super geeky, like World of Warcraft I played for a very long time. All of the sort of Blizzard franchisey things like StarCraft I used to love as well. And but I also do think that the lines between video games and cinematic storytelling are shifting a lot. You know, it's funny, one of my earlier theater gigs was this project where it was at the Sydney Opera House, and the audience come into the center of the room, and there's 4 screens, and my character was Ram, and there was about 3 or 4 actors that would play that role each night. But depending on which story the audience chose to go with, so the different stories would play on the screen, the audience would move into a different part of the theater, and eventually the actor would come out and play the character that they had built, and they would say, I want him to be more, you know, angry or more at peace. And so then you play that character at the end. And I do think that's, you know, that's going on maybe 10 years ago now, probably longer. But the line between video games and realities is shifting a lot. And I think we're only going to see more of that as sort of time goes on and the industries sort of merge. And, you know, again, a lot of those bigger companies now are licensing games, making games, and those properties, I think, means that certainly the bigger companies are now more invested in, I think this is almost undebatable, in intellectual property and what those worlds can be, because people fall in love with the worlds, you know. And once you've got a fan base, and it is the fans that determine where the money goes, the more those then investment pools or companies can invest into those IP. And I love that, because I do think they're just becoming more immersive and experiential. I mean, even with what's the Stranger Things, you know, or even Squid Game. In Squid Game now, you can go and do the Squid Game experience for yourself. It's a room, and you can get your friends, and you go to jump the laser beams and whatever. And now you've got the TV show. We know that there's a game that's online. And I think we're just going to see more and more of that over time.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. And talking about video game deaths, well, since we didn't talk so much about that in the part before, your last death in the series was a sort of, you get sucked into the floor. How long it takes to do that scene? I mean, it's all CGI. There is some real, let's say, floor that is over the camera, so you can go down.
Yeah, great question. And it is shot in multiple sections. So I remember because in this shot there's these hands that sort of come out and grab Dalton.
Yeah.
So that's literally, I think, a bunch of people on set that had black gloves on that were, just help.
Great.
Anyone got another set of hands. And so, yeah, they built a sort of platform that meant that I think I had to spin and then sort of go into the thing while the hands grab. So yeah, there was a raised platform, and then you've sort of got a camera here, and you're screaming and doing whatever you're doing while these people's hands that are grabbing you pull down. That's one part. And then the monster piece, it was a visual effects piece, and that entire landscape was a set. So I think it was built in about 4 or 5 different takes and areas depending on the shot. But yeah, that entire world that they built under there, I think they ended up destroying a lot of it too, which is fortunate that by the end of the season.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And so the landscape sort of evolved. And again, once you've destroyed a building, it's much harder to go back in and film there. But some of those shots, I think we also had to get at the end, because they were even though they're a little bit earlier in the season, there were different versions of buildings and things. So yeah, again, multiple sort of takes and things.
There, the lighting was strange. It was a sort of greenish. It was the lighting or CGI, let's say?
It was lighting. Yeah, I think they would have. So they do a color balance and sort of another layer in post-production where they sort of add details and they determine what the sort of overall color spectrum is that they sort of then steer everything towards. But I do remember too, at the time, it was a greenish sort of place. Again, they built the entire city in a soundstage in New Zealand. And so it was not like, often you'll go, if you're shooting on something, they'll just build one building and then we'll shoot that building, and then they'll build the city in visual effects in post-production. So it's all digital, but they actually built the entire city in a single soundstage. So it was very cool to be able to just walk between different buildings. And then in the episode, we were able to do that because, again, some of those buildings were next to each other.
That's great. That's great. So this was the last question. And Lindsay, thank you once again for being with us and for sharing all this story from the Knight of Sumeria to your theater and music, and of course your more recent project. It's been a real pleasure celebrating the 10 years of Ash vs. Evil Dead with you, and we wish all the best for what's next. And we will be watching closely to see where your journey takes you.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be with you. I really appreciate it. And so good. I mean, 10-year anniversary, pulling everyone together. Such a great idea. And it's a legacy, and I think a franchise that really deserves it. Great people at the heartbeat of something that really connected with people that really love it. And it was and is and remains a pleasure to have been a part of it. And who knows where things will go. Rob Tappert's they're still making the movies.
Yeah. There is one coming out in 2026, Evil Dead Born, and there is another one for which a new director was, let's say, hired for a script that we will see. We will see. I mean,
we have definitely not seen the last of Evil Dead yet.
Yeah. Maybe one day Dalton will come back. I mean, we don't know what was its end. I mean,
possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
I ain't gonna say nothing, but it's possible.
Thank you so much, and have a good day, good night, good day. Because
good day. Thank you.
Good day. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.